What time is it for you?
It is 10 to 1 a.m. What about you?
I'm in Australia. It's 1:30 p.m. in the afternoon.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for joining me on this impromptu chat.
No, it's all
Appreciate
right, man. It is
it.
pretty impromptu.
What's that?
Pretty impromptu indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I like it this way. I'm gonna have a beer, so cheers.
All right. Cheers. Oh, you should have let me know. I could have grabbed one.
Well, by all means, if you want one, go get one.
Are you live? You live already?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll quickly run.
Doesn't matter.
All right. Cheers for that. Cheers.
Cheers, brother. So, yeah, man. Why don't you tell me? I was just looking at your Twitter profile bit, and you're into obviously Bitcoin, but Austrian economics and stuff. Are you studying that, or what's your background?
So I'm pretty young, so I'm only like 21. Currently studying economics. I'm just doing my bachelor's in my final year now. It's actually pretty similar to your chat with Becky from
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple of days. Yeah, I was listening to that, and this is kind of a massive coincidence. But like, I was listening to that last night, and I was just thinking, how cool would it be to be on Bitcoin Rapid Fire? I was thinking about it last night, and then when you put up that tweet, I was just like, yeah, well, I'll just have a chat with him. I'll see, and then see if I could get on. And then you're like, nah, this is gonna go live. I was like, oh, all right. I figured, you got to shoot your shot.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
Massive coincidence.
So, you're studying just like, I guess, regular economics in uni?
Yeah. So I always loved economics in school, and I always thought economics was just economics. There was no other schools. Obviously, that's what everyone thinks. And then kind of discovered Bitcoin in the middle of first year with a mate of mine. He kind of really got me into it. So yeah, it was mid 2017. Just kind of, bought some and didn't really do much. And then from there, it was early 2018 when I really fell down the rabbit hole. I basically dropped out of university for the semester and just put all of my energy and effort into learning about the history of money and everything. And like, I did no courses that semester. And I just woke up every day and I'll just sit watching YouTube, reading books, going through the Mike Maloney documentaries and things like that, reading the Bitcoin Standard, and man, it blew my mind.
Yep, that's a pretty common story, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it before.
Yeah. And so, okay, that was early 18. You took that semester off.
Yeah.
And so, and then you come back to school. You're fully orange pilled. What's the experience like, I guess, then and now?
It's so different. Just the natural like inquisition into asking and questioning what you're being taught is really what I kind of learned. Always, a lot of the Bitcoin fundamentals, and I feel like so many people that are already in the space, they're already so well aligned with a lot of the fundamentals. And then it kind of like clicks when they understand Bitcoin and those fundamentals. And so just being naturally inquisitive, like trying to question what's going on, already had that a little bit. And then the notch just got turned all the way up. So just whatever was being taught in lectures, I'd kind of just like put my hand up and go like, that doesn't, that's quite contradictory. So yeah, it's
like, when you do that, or when you would do that, well, like, what kind of pushback do you get if you chime up and say anything like that's counter to kind of how economics is taught in mainstream university classes? Like, what would be the experience? What would the teacher say? What would go down?
It's honestly just dismissal. It's kind of like, that's not an important question.
Right.
It's like, I've got a PhD. I've been doing this for so long. I don't know how to answer that, but it's not important. Like, why are you even asking that? It's not part of the course. Like, just pipe down. And it's a shame because no one else in the course is also inquisitive. Like, I was doing a monetary economics subject, and we finished the 2-hour lecture. There was like 20 minutes to go, and the lecturer was like, "So, I'm going to spend the last 20 minutes describing why the financial crisis happened in 2008. It's not going to be on the exam, but I think it's important for you guys to know. And when she said it's not going to be on the exam, 450 people got up and just left the room. And there was about 4 of us left.
Right.
4 of us left to listen to why the global financial crisis happened in 2008. So there's no inquisition into what's going on. There's no natural like curiosity. It's just, I'm here, get me this piece of paper. I just need to pass, and then I'll go and get a job in government or in banking. Yeah.
Yeah. And just out of curiosity, what did she say was the cause of the 2008 financial crisis?
It was just, a lot of recklessness and leverage, which I don't think anyone can deny. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a strange, like, because, and obviously no disrespect, but like, I don't think there's anything overly special about any of us, other than the fact that we somehow wound up here at this time engaged in this phenomenon. And it's just, it's so weird that like you could be in a class with, let's for easy numbers, let's say 500 other people, and you're the only one that had the curiosity or I guess the curiosity to follow different threads and lines of thinking and reasoning within the subject matter that presumably you have some interest in. And if you're doing an economics major, to ask like, very fundamental questions like what is money and what's the role and function of money, et cetera. And then, follow and then be aware enough, I guess, of what's going on in the world to see things that are happening that are related to that. But it still blows my mind that it's so rare that it's not more, that more people aren't asking those questions.
Yeah. And I mean, you obviously touch on this topic a lot, but in terms of central banking, in that same course, we had a guest lecturer who was one of the heads of research at the Reserve Bank of Australia, so just our central bank. And he put up this chart. I've even got this on recording. And it was basically a chart of income and wealth inequality in Australia over, a couple of decades, and then also central bank decisions and policy. And he overlaid them on top of each other and was like, I didn't think there was any correlation. And then I ran a regression, and turns out there's like a 95% correlation between our decisions and income inequality. And I really don't know why that is. So if anyone can tell me, that'd be great.
That's what the guest lecturer was saying?
Yeah, I've got it on recording, honestly. He was just baffled. He was like, yeah, I didn't think there was any correlation, but it turns out there's a massive correlation between what we do and inequality. Oh, well. And then he just moved on. I couldn't believe it.
What? He just blatantly said that and then moved on?
Yep.
Holy shit, man. The cognitive dissonance or I'm sure there's lots wrapped up in that. Like, he doesn't want to go down that path, obviously, because
questioning your
nobody wants to take responsibility for something like that. What about other, like, you just said people in your class aren't that interested, but you said, you went down the rabbit hole and you took the semester off and you went crazy and you learned everything. When you came back to school, I presume you were having lots of conversations with some of your friends in school about this stuff. What was their reception like?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. It's so funny. I've learned over the years that if someone's not interested and if someone doesn't ask you, don't bother. Don't bother trying to tell them, because it's a waste of their time and it's a waste of your time. Like, they don't want. They're true. Not ready. Mm-hmm. It's a waste of time. But I became a lot more receptive to hearing even just the word like Bitcoin in classrooms and things. And I've got some pretty funny stories of sitting across the table from a couple of guys, and they'd be like, "Oh, what's this Bitcoin thing in week 4?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't know, but the lecturer said it's not really on the exam, so we don't have to worry about it." And he's like, "Yeah, good. It's not really relevant in this industry anyway."
But Bitcoin was actually in your curriculum in some capacity?
It was, yeah. And
how was it framed? Like, how was it presented?
There was a multi-choice question that was, Bitcoin is bad for the environment, true, false? The answer was true. So then it's just, it's ridiculous, man. It's honestly ridiculous. There was 5 or 6 multi-choice questions that were just, painting Bitcoin in a bad light.
Right.
Just no understanding of it. And I tried talking with that lecturer about, the different Basel ratios. So we're already at Basel 3, probably going to have Basel 4 pretty soon. And they're just allowing more and more leverage at a gradually increasing rate. And they just keep contradicting themselves. And I tried asking my lecturer, like, why does this keep happening? Surely there's a better way. And she knew that something was wrong. I could tell from the way that she was speaking. She was like, but she just didn't know if there was any better alternatives. So she was like, no, this is it.
Okay. Okay. So you finished one. Is this your last semester, or do you have another one?
Well, so in the same way, I think was his name Becky. So yeah, there's 2 semesters in the year, and we're halfway through the year. So I actually just finished doing one of my final exams,
Nice.
literally an hour ago. So I've got that, 2 more exams, and then 1 more semester to go,
Right.
and then at the end of this, I'll be done. Yeah.
Man, this must. I can see it being frustrating, but also an interesting time to be studying economics in university, just because of what's happening all around the world. Because any other time period, not any other time period. If you're in 2008, it was probably interesting as well. But like, just there's so much the teachers probably have to account for and ask. Students are
Yeah.
probably asking questions about what the hell is going on. What's the response? Are they just all saying like, oh, COVID, black swan, can't account for it, or like how are they explaining away what's happening right now?
God, I don't know. Like it's coming across obviously just as a health crisis. There's no, even though things were, horribly wrong, repo markets back in, what was it, September,
October,
yeah, like everything was breaking down. They're just treating it as a health crisis, and therefore it's quite standard and quite normal. And because we're not even in physical uni, I'm pretty much working full time, and I'm not even going into classes. So I'm not really tuning into too many lectures. So because I'm honestly just quite over what they're teaching.
Right.
There's so many contradictions, and like when a lecturer introduces themselves as someone that's currently their main research topic is whether mortgage debt should be subsidized by the government, like I don't want to listen to you. Like, I'm sorry, like I really just I can't agree with it.
Right.
So and then I'm doing one course on international trade theory and policy, and it's got a chart of like tariffs, quotas, import quotas, and like restrictions on exports, and on all these different trade policies that can be implemented. And then it's got producer surplus, consumer surplus, and all these different criteria. And at the bottom, overall welfare. And in all cases, it shows it falls or it's ambiguous. And it's like, why do we even discuss this? Like, in all cases, you've just laid out that in all cases it's bad for society. It's just the contradictions. Like,
is there any mention of Austrian School of Economics in your course curriculum?
Not at all. I have not even heard the word. Most people don't even know it's a thing. I don't even think my lecturer. I've tried to mention Austrian economics. I don't even think they know. They just still think that it's economics.
You have tried.
I have tried. Yeah.
And what response do you get?
It's honestly just as I said before, just dismissal. It's just not important. It's like, no, economics.
Man, our education system globally is so broken. It's so ridiculous. So are you working in like a professional capacity with economics right now?
To an extent. So I'm working for one of the big 4 banks here in Australia at the moment. I'm working in a pretty interesting area there at the moment. It's I'm working basically in their home loans department, doing a lot of like home loan servicing. So the statistics, like I'm probably not allowed to reveal them, but the statistics on the amount of people deferring their mortgages and just getting further indebted, and some of the things that are being brought out as hardship, avenues for people to take that just get them further into debt, and some of the questionable kind of like marketing on extra credit, like personal loans and credit cards and things. It's like, oh, you can't afford your mortgage, well, how about take out a credit card?
Yeah.
It's honestly, it's really, and just the incentive system is really quite broken. It really frustrates me in Australia because I'm not sure in America whether you have this thing called like negative gearing, where you can basically get if you have an investment property, the interest you pay to the bank on the investment property is tax deductible. So you're incentivized to buy an investment property at a 5% down payment. And then just basically, it doesn't matter what interest rate you're paying. So the amount of people that call up and just say, like, put me on interest only for 10 years. I don't want to pay down the principal at all. And then basically they just pay the interest at whatever rate, and whatever they pay, they get back anyway. So they're just taking houses off the market, and it's just funneling money from basically, anyone who's renting. It's just lowering that price of houses. Anyone that's renting, the money is just being funneled, number one, to the banks, and then number two, to anyone who's already, middle and upper class that can afford to do that.
And presumably increasing the price of homes.
Yeah, it's right. Just homes being taken, like, I don't know, in Australia, it's probably the worst housing bubble in the world, because we didn't have the '08 crash, really. Like, we just kept going. And the incentive structure is really, really broken.
And what's been the government's response to, the COVID crisis? Like, did they do a massive stimulus? Has there been, big programs? Has there been UBI of any kind? What's been the response there?
There's pretty much UBI. Yeah. So if you were working and you've been laid off, then you can get what's called JobKeeper, and that's $750 a week, just straight into your bank. Like, some people are on as much money as I am working full time, and they just don't have to do anything. It's and I know
criteria for that, or just if you're not working, you get
it. There was no criteria. Well, it was if you were working, you had to be employed by the company, and if the company laid you off. But even if you were working 2 hours a week beforehand, you now get the full amount. There was no, progressive
Holy
system.
Shit.
So some people that were doing like 10 hours a week on part time are on now $750 a week, and even more when you factor in different kind of like rental assistance and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I know people that have knocked back job offers because they're sitting on $750 a week doing nothing.
Why would you get up?
Why would you get
home, play video games, go to the beach, whatever you like doing?
Exactly.
How long are they doing that for? Is there a set term?
They have announced a deadline. I think it might be in July. But I mean, if things don't come back to normal, I think they'll just extend it.
Are you guys still like fully locked down?
We're coming back out of it. So at the moment, states, you can pretty much travel anywhere within your own state.
Right.
And there's not too much lockdown anymore. We're in like phase 2 of coming back out of it. Like, you can go and dine out, up to 20 people at a venue. We've definitely come through the worst of it, and Australia really wasn't hit too hard by COVID, we're really lucky.
Yeah.
We were quite lucky, but a lot of medical experts saying as we come into winter, that virus stays alive so much longer on surfaces, and we just had a lot of protests in the city, with tens of thousands of people in each capital city in Australia got together and probably expecting a bit of a second wave here.
Well, fuck, if we don't, then, because that's happened all over the world, or in many parts, in the US and London, Australia and Canada. Like, if we don't see massive uptick in the virus, then somebody's got some splaining to do.
Yeah.
But, the thing that gets me, and I've said this a little bit recently, but, I think most of us are aware that the income inequality that's created by, central bank measures, widening the wealth gap, widening the income gap, over the last 10 years, this has created a lot of social problems, especially in the United States, but all over the world. And of course it would, this is to be expected. And at least in Canada, our projected, I'm in Canada right now, our debt is projected to be 10 times, or the deficit rather, 10 times what it was last year. So last year was 25 billion, and that was already, a political issue. People were really concerned that the liberals were overspending and blah, blah, blah. And it's projected to be over 250 billion this year. So, that's 10x, 10x the debt. And in the States, there's been a ton of stimulus as well. So I'm asking myself, like, and it depends, like, the insertion point matters, and there's the different way that this plays out in terms of velocity of money and stuff like that. But punchline is, if you do kind of 10 years of income redistribution via the money printer and via central bank, buffoonery, etc., in the course of a few months or even 1 year, what kind of what manifestations of that inequality should we expect to see? And like, I
Yeah.
think, and I guess the answer is like a lot, because
Mm,
all the different unrest that's been happening around the world over the last 10 years, in large part is due to this inequality. And
yeah.
if,
Yeah.
if like, can you even imagine 10xing that in the course of less than a year? And not to
Yeah.
mention that all this debt, obviously, the only way it can ever be paid is via tax, whether the surreptitious tax of inflation or direct taxes.
Mm,
And it's so surprising to me that most people that I speak to, kind of like in my physical daily life, have like very little appreciation for that fact.
yeah. Yeah.
It seems like, the government has a magical, wand to fix things, and,
And they
consequences kind of be damned, at out of sight, out of mind, or
yeah.
at least it's not, they can't see the direct relationship.
Mm. But then they just think that the government kind of always knows what the right thing to do, and and there's this kind of what I see is two types of people that just think that the government always knows what to do, because they're all powerful and all knowing. And then there's a group of people that believe, which is what a lot of us probably used to be in, is that the government is this massive evil entity, this all knowing evil body of. But at the end of the day, it's just another group of people with superior powers that get to make these decisions. They really don't know what they're doing in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And I do, it's quite funny. I do like a weekly family like Zoom trivia, and every couple of weeks I go like, so what's the Federal Reserve's balance sheet at now? We start at like 6, and then we get to like 6.7, and then the next week it's like 7.1, and everyone's
You
just kind
just
of like,
always keep that question on the trivia so they all know like how much is growing.
I do it now and then, every now and then, but I try and throw in some pretty like sneaky Bitcoin ones. Like I threw in one that was uh, which countries have successfully banned Bitcoin. And people are kind of like, oh, it's probably like China, Venezuela, India, and you hit them with like, no country's ever successfully banned.
That's a
Right?
good
They all
question.
fail.
Yeah.
And you throw ones in like, how many transactions is the Bitcoin network processed, which is I think what 550 million. It's I'm slowly, and it's really crazy to see. My parents are just starting to tip onto it, which is really great to see. They're kind of me back in late 2017, early 2018, where they're like just falling down the rabbit hole of like, what is money? Because I've been pushing them every couple of weeks. I'd always talk to them about what's going on, and they kind of always just like brushed it off. But now they're like really starting to question it, and in some cases they're more up to date on what's going on in Bitcoin than I am, which is it's really funny to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you convinced them to, take any kind of position yet, or not that you
Yeah.
have to share if you have, because of course these are private
No,
matters.
they're open to it.
They're interested. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good to see.
And are they like, do they have a finance or economics background as well?
No,
And
not at all,
the
really.
only reason why I ask is because like you might, that your aura of like knowing these things might
Mhm.
contribute to like your ability to pitch them.
Yeah, no, they well, to the extent that everyone else does, and that they have to try and have like their 401k or superannuation, or and let try and have their own investing so that they're not going backwards. But it's like that running on the treadmill just to stay in the same place,
Yeah.
when you could just save your money in Bitcoin and jump on a travelator and just constantly be moving forward.
So what do you want to do when school finishes at the end of next semester? Like, do you have plans on, something to sink your teeth into, or?
Yeah. So I mean, I'd love to get involved in the Bitcoin space. Already know quite a lot of people doing things around, and I mean, my friend and I, who we both got in 2017, we'd really like to start a business, but we keep on coming up with ideas and then going, well, hang on, this is dependent on Bitcoin succeeding, and if we just invested in Bitcoin, the returns would be far greater, which is a common problem in the space.
Yeah.
So if we find, I mean, at the moment, because we're so young, we're kind of just like, let's just work as hard as we can, stack sats, and then in a couple of years we'll have the capital behind us to know what we want to do. So that's kind of the thesis at the moment. But other than that, yeah, I mean, really interested in kind of global macro trends. So, I've been following a lot of Raoul Pal, and Real Vision and things like that. It'd be, if anyone's watching that owns a macro fund or anything like that, and wants to give me a job, that would be amazing, because that is really what I want to get into. Yeah.
And dude, Real Vision Australia. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a lot of like, reasonably experienced, level-headed, inquisitive, economic and financial people over there. Maybe you should be the one to sit down in front of them and pick their brains.
Yeah. Well, that would be pretty awesome. And that's, a lot of the idea that my friend and I have had is setting up something kind of consulting and educational, for businesses and individuals, because yeah, I mean, both of us are constantly talking about it, and it's really awesome to have a friend that is so involved in it as well, because I know a lot of people don't have anyone in their immediate circles that are involved, and it's really hard because they just have to jump on Twitter and kind of get their fix on Twitter. But I can just come up and go like, let's go for beers tonight, and we just go to a bar and we'll just be talking for hours about
Oh
Bitcoin and
man,
what's going on, and it's awesome. So
that
yeah,
is
we really have
key.
to explain it to people, and yeah, that would probably be what we'd be looking at doing.
That's awesome, man. I'd love to be able to call up. Like, I haven't lived where I currently am staying for like a decade, so I don't have that. But I'd love to call up a friend, and when you really
Mm,
just need to like, have a Bitcoin jam and just like vent
yeah,
out whatever, and just go to a pub and chat for 3-4 hours about Bitcoin, have a few beers.
yeah, it's awesome. It's so
What
much fun.
what part of Australia did you say you were in?
I'm in Brisbane at the moment, and if
Oh,
you're ever
okay.
swinging by, I'll have a beer with you.
Yeah,
I'll
we'll do
shout you.
that. We'll go have a beer and talk Bitcoin. But so, have you been to any of the Sydney meetups, like with Stefan and stuff?
Stefan, I haven't been to one of the Sydney ones. There's a pretty good Bitcoin base in Brisbane. Do you know? Well, Alex Svetsky,
Oh
he's
yeah, yeah.
semi Brisbane based, and the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
he's really pretty involved. So him and Grayson JLM on Twitter. So yeah,
I think Alex is stuck in Europe right now, or at
yeah,
least
well,
last I spoke to him, he was stuck somewhere in Europe.
yeah, yeah. He's pretty fun. He's been working a lot for his company Amber over there, trying to get that launched in Europe. So it's basically like Swamp. So if
Right.
anyone's in Australia, yeah, a good DCA platform there. That's what he runs.
And do you notice like what the general sense about Bitcoin in Australia? Is it starting to pick up again, like on a retail mainstream level? Do you think, or not so
Um,
much?
it's really hard to say. I mean, we were quite crazy with Bitcoin for a while. I think we had the most exchanges per capita of
Really?
any country. Yeah, like there was a lot of exchanges. Um,
In
it's really hard.
2017, I'm guessing, like some.
Yeah, 2017. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really hard to say because there's a main page called like Crypto Australia, which has a lot of people in it, and I don't pay attention to it. It's really yeah, it's there's not that great content in there, so I don't pay too much attention to it, man. I'm pretty more relaxed and just cruising, working when I can and stacking sets. Yeah,
You've reached Bitcoin Zen, where you just
Bitcoin's in.
put your
That's
head down, work, stack sats, and
yeah,
it'll materialize eventually, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
Did you have to
really
steer
awesome.
your parents away from the shit coins, or was it difficult to do that? Did they want to veer down that road?
They have been mentioning it, and I sent them a really good podcast with Jan Pritzer, and I think it was Stefan, or it might have been on Citizen Bitcoin. God, man, I listen to too many; it all just gets mixed up.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like they really just don't need a token, and I think that got to them. I mean, I was telling them, but yeah, I think they in a lot of cases need to hear it from someone else.
Right. And
Yeah.
since being in Bitcoin, like from 2017, have you noticed much like change in how you see the world, or personal philosophy, or approach to life in different ways?
Um, Obviously, as you go through the kind of cycles of understanding it, there's phases where you get really angry at what's happening and you
Right.
really want to try and change it because you're just like, that's not right. Um, and so much, wasteful behavior that goes on at the moment. So reaching, a bit more of the Zen side. And as I said before, that notch of just all those fundamentals just being turned up to the max in terms of just natural inquisition and things like that. So just questioning whatever's going on, being a lot more conscious about what I'm eating as well. Obviously that's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
I haven't gone for carnivore yet. Are you a carnivore?
No, I've tried it for periods, but I mean, I had a Dairy Queen Blizzard tonight after dinner, so no, I'm not a full blown carnivore yet. But when I've tried it, I mean, I've been really into health and fitness for most of my life, so I've tried pretty much every diet, and I feel really good on it. I haven't gotten like blood work and stuff when I was on it, which I would be interested in seeing, just if anything has changed, because it runs against, what we're taught when we're kids, obviously, and even what you learn in you know nutrition classes in medical school, or if you're a dietitian or something like that. I mean, it just runs against everything, but it feels really good. Like I feel really strong. I sleep good. Joint pain goes away. It's there's something there for sure.
Yeah, so. I haven't been able to bring myself to do it. I don't know. I kind of just like the variety of food too much.
Yeah.
And it's really limiting. And then you're also, once you're on it, you're kind of like stuck in that, if you're just eating steaks pretty much and trying to eat something else really mucks with you. You just develop a big intolerance to everything else. And so I kind of just enjoy the variety too much, and I'm not noticing anything, bad. So
are you familiar with Paul Saladino, Dr. Paul Saladino? He's a good one because Dr. Sean Baker, who was on Rogan's pod and kind of popularized the diet, I had him on the podcast actually, and like he will advocate just having like a steak every night, right? And
really,
Jordan Peterson has talked about his diet of steak, salt, and water, which, like, if it works, great. But Paul Saladino is more of like a nose to tail sort of carnivore. And I get the impression that he thinks I don't get the impression, I've heard him say he thinks you need to add in some of the other, body parts of the animal because of the nutrients that, are present there. And that kind of rounds out your nutrient mix and probably makes it just more enjoyable from a variety standpoint. But I'm with you, man. For me, it's like 80-90% of the time I'm pretty tight on the diet. And then the other 10-20% is, I'll never give up pizza. That's just not going to happen because that needs to be in my life.
It's just too good when you're 6 years deep and you're out at a bar and someone's like, should we get some pizzas? You're just like, yes.
Or just the beers themselves, right? Like those are too good. I can't give those up.
Exactly.
But man, you made me think of something earlier when you were saying, you're talking about you and your friend trying to start a business or thinking about starting a business, and then just thinking, it's probably just better just to work and hold, convert fiat to Bitcoin for now. And, I obviously know what I agree, but it'll be so interesting when that trend starts like shifting. Like, let's say maybe sometime in the next cycle or in the next run or, the next few years. And like, I hate even talking about this as a foregone conclusion, because obviously it's not, but we're all very bullish here, I think. So let's say it's like in the 1 to 500K range USD, right? When so many people who want to do so much good, both for themselves and for whatever kind of area of interest they have, when they're capitalized like that, like I can't wait to see the kind of explosion of businesses and services that we all create to service what is a far greater, Bitcoin economy, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. There are, there's a lot of companies though that are only profitable during this transition phase. Like a lot of the lending, the over collateralized lending, like that's only a thing during this transition phase, because you don't see over collateralized loans in US dollars at the moment because it's already like the most liquid asset, and it's the most stable. So that kind of business model post transition phase and under a Bitcoin standard, it's no longer a thing. What are some of the other common ones,
which is fine, right? Like, to say nothing of that specific business, but obviously there's going to be businesses that are relative or relevant to the times that they're in, right? So this transitionary period, we have a certain type of business, and then in the next period we have a different kind.
And I was going to say that that consulting side of things will probably dry up as well, but that's probably just going to be a constantly evolving in terms of security and business security. That will probably continue on for decades and centuries, just because it'll be constantly evolving with new hardware wallets and whatnot. So there'll always be new things there. So
Yeah, it'll be really interesting. I remember back in I guess the late 90s. I was pretty young, but I remember there being like internet like businesses. You know,
mm,
like so someone in your neighborhood or your town that like was handy with computers had like an internet consulting company, and they tinkered with computers too, and they could fix your computer and
yeah,
tell you about the internet. And I think I don't think Bitcoin's going to fade into the background as much as the internet. You know, you often hear people say, well, you know, in the future, people won't even know they're using Bitcoin. And I can see that being true, but also if Bitcoin's actually going to be money people use, even if they're using a derivative of it of some kind or a next layer solution of some kind, they're still interacting with the unit that they're exchanging for
yeah,
a good or a service. So I feel like the relationship will be a bit closer. But I take the point in that like it's just like dialing up to the internet back in the day, which you probably never even had to do. But you know,
don't,
we
I'm not that young. I remember the noise. I think it was
you've heard the noise.
the
Yeah,
noise.
we used to have to press connect and it'd be like meh, 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 all that shit.
I know.
And people don't appreciate it now anymore how cumbersome it was. So I think like it'll be smoothed out tremendously, but I don't know if it'll be like abstracted away as the internet is today. Like you just blow up your
Yeah.
phone and you can hop on Twitter or watch a movie on Netflix or
Mm.
something.
No, I agree. I think people have to understand it. Otherwise, we kind of fail. Um,
Right.
because it'll just be, centralized. And I really, don't like the way that things are tending towards so many custodial services, and especially things like liquid and things like that. And so many people calling for stable coins because it's just fiduciary media of fiduciary media. It's kind of quite funny. And I think if that does end up happening where everyone doesn't really custody their own things, then we kind of fail, because that centralization means that there is that point of failure, and people will be able to manipulate and control things in the same way that gold was self-custodied and then was centralized and then corrupted.
Yeah.
And so even if we move back to a gold standard, which would be better than what we've currently got, it's kind of Murphy's law. Whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And at some point in the future, if that centralization effect happens, then it will inevitably probably fail, which I really don't want to see.
Yeah.
So
I think I agree, and it's something I think about a bunch. And I when I think about institutional money, right? We all have heard the term like the institutions are coming, and it's exciting because
mm,
it's a lot of demand, right? But at the same time, none of those institutions are going to, or very few are going to self custody. Now, maybe some of the more like enlightened ones will, you know, partner with an Unchained and do a collaborative custody model, and
mm,
that would be good. Like I think that's the way to go. But you know, a lot of them will just custody with BitGo or Fidelity or whatever.
mm,
And as you say, then we're you know it's not as bad as the old system because still like you can't just create more out of thin air and all this kind of stuff. But not your keys, not your coin, and you know you don't actually own them, and you create another point of failure, and you create the you invite trust into the model again, and so it's not as it's not as revolutionary as it could be,
yeah,
but at the
yeah,
same
definitely.
time I'll take all that fresh demand for mine because mine are
Yeah.
mine will be safe.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's like the thing. Well, as long as you've still got yours, then you've still got the most optimal form of money. So even if everyone else custodies, at least you've still got yours. So that's one positive side. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I think companies like Unchained who really put Bitcoin and the possibilities and the that Bitcoin allows for at the forefront are going to succeed massively in the future. And
Mm,
I'm just super impressed with that company in particular. Like I've spoken to some of the people there, use some of their products. They really seem to be on point. But so I think they'll win massively. And the ones
mm,
that offer that don't maximize the potential of the asset will probably succeed as a result of legacy integration and
mm.
stuff like that. But I think they'll lose ground as we move into the future.
Relatively compared to
Yeah,
the others that
yeah,
first. No
exactly.
one loses out by getting onto a Bitcoin standard. Everyone wins. You may just be relatively, worse off to someone who got in earlier, but no one loses out. Uh, the best thing you can do is just trade your money for Bitcoin at any price. Get a hold of it.
That would sound so crazy to so many people, but I
Yeah,
obviously totally agree. It was like, yeah, of course, the best thing you can do is just pay, exchange at any rate for Bitcoin.
yeah.
Um,
Magic
what,
internet funny.
yeah, what kind of timeline do you see this playing out on?
Um, I don't know, man. It's really hard to say. I mean, there's a good kind of quote going around like next time it goes up, it might not come back down. And I mean, I see that really happening where, during this next kind of epoch that we're in, as the price starts to go up and we go on another run, like if we get to 100K, this is which isn't unreasonable, looking at Plan B's S2F model
Hmm.
in this cycle. So 100K, who's going to be looking at it? Everyone is going to be looking at it, and there's so many questionable things going on at the moment that I don't think central banks will be able to ignore it. I don't think anyone will be able to ignore it at that point. And maybe I'm just saying that because I've kind of only been through one cycle.
Hmm.
And obviously, I'm not sure. If you've been through more, you might know more. But I see it as this next one. If people like Warren Buffett or even a central bank are trying to buy this asset off you, who is going to want to sell it? And so we could hit 100 and then just gap even higher, because who's going to want to sell it when there's that much demand for it?
Hmm.
And yeah, the circulating supplies is already just diminishing with people just DCAing, and that's just going to become ever increasing. So that level off the market is just going to keep going up.
The thing is in that, in a world where Bitcoin is 100, 200, 300, 400K, the world has to look pretty different, don't you think, for that to happen? Like if the world values Bitcoin at $500,000 a coin in the next few years, then the
Mm,
world looks pretty different.
yeah, yeah. I think we'll probably
I
end up
mean,
seeing it. No, go on.
no, I was just gonna say, I mean, the world is starting to look pretty fucking different now anyway. So, maybe the world is front running Bitcoin, but
Geez, that's a good one. Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll probably end up seeing a pretty massive polarization of just different classes of people really resistant to the change, and governments will probably try and insert themselves into creating that divide and conquer.
it's the
And
Bitcoiners' fault.
it's the Bitcoiners' fault, yeah. And so unfortunately, they probably will. I don't know, man. It's really hard to be optimistic for the future in a lot of cases, just playing it out. When we just see how kind of horrible people can be to each other in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So, geez, man, that took a pretty dark turn.
Well, I mean, it's for sure, man. But it's the world we're in right now, right? There's so much madness. I've been saying it lately, and it really, because I've always had such a reverence, but also like a responsibility toward truth. And as a very basic, inconsequential example, like the first time I came home to my house drunk, like from being a kid and like drinking, right? And I came home wasted. Like, and
Yeah,
I had two older sisters, and I saw like every time they got in trouble, they would just lie, 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 and
yeah,
they would just, sorry if my sisters are watching, but that's just how they got down, and they just tried to hide everything.
yeah,
And I just like, there was something about the false reality that a lie creates that I detested. And so I just
mm,
always wanted to be in truth. And so,
yeah.
I came home, I was wasted. My mom goes, "You look like you've been drinking." And I was like, "Yep, I've been drinking tonight and I'm pretty drunk. I know I'm in trouble, but there's no sense of having this conversation right now. So I'm going to go to sleep. And then in the morning, we can do the
You
punishment
can,
thing."
yeah,
and so it's so disturbing now, where it no longer seems as though the truth is important to
no,
people. It's
yeah,
it's all about emotion and impulse and
yeah,
uh, yeah, pure like emotion. There's just logic and reason and truth, or logic and reason employed to come to or discover the greatest approximation of truth that's available, just doesn't
mm,
seem to be a concern to anybody.
no, yeah,
People aren't interested in looking at data to try to contextualize an issue to see what is the truth of this matter. And then
no,
once we've kind of come to the best approximation of truth, what our response should be, or what
mm,
changes we
mm,
should make, whether it's policy, whether it's individual behavior, whatever. And COVID's a great example. The Black Lives Matters is a great example. Like all the things that are going on right now. And that's the most concerning part for me, because once you let go of a tether in truth, then all bets
Mm,
are off. Like if it's all just unbridled emotion and impulse, then anything could happen, because
yeah,
that, there's no grounding.
yeah. There's just so much outrage culture, and just a lot of virtue signaling. People doing something for the sake of making it seem like they're doing it, and in a lot of cases they're not doing what they're saying. And yeah, it's have you read much of Ayn Rand? It's pretty common in the
None at all,
space.
actually. Not yet. No, I need to.
Yeah. I would say it's the most influential book on me that I've ever read and probably ever will read.
Which
It,
Atlas?
yeah, Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, Alex Svetsky actually put me onto it, and man, it's a big book and it takes a while to get through, but it is just the roadmap of exactly what we're going through today. Just
Really?
seeing some of the policies that get implemented, it's honestly, it's like frightening and it's also hilarious. But it's a phenomenal book. Yeah, I highly recommend it to anyone that's watching and to yourself.
I'll definitely read it, but you can spoil it a bit for me. According to the book and where we're at in the book's narrative, what comes next?
Oh man, well, there's just a lot of like government encroachment into people's liberties, and so much of like people who are actually producing get it's all about that redistribution. So it's like if you go out and do something, it's no, we're going to tax you or we're going to regulate you because that's unfair on everyone else, and we're doing this in the interest of public good and things like that. It's like if you've gone out and built something or created something, it's like no, you're evil, you're an evil capitalist. You've made a profit, how dare you.
Uh,
And there's quotes in the movie where it's people trying to be like virtuous, going, "I want you to know I've never made a profit in my life." And then the protagonist is just like, and that is exactly why, like, I hate you, and things like that. So I'd say there's just constant government overreach and encroachment into what's going on, and them trying to control it, which obviously would solve the one issue, and then just create so many more issues. So I mean, at the end, society kind of falls apart, and that's a possible outcome for us in that we kind of fall into like the dark ages, like after the Roman Empire fell into the
yeah.
dark age.
Yeah.
And hopefully that won't happen because of the internet. Like if the internet stays up and we still have communication, that is such a powerful force.
Yeah. Having communication and Bitcoin is, that's a huge uh, reason for hope, in my opinion.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
that makes this different than anyone who've predicted it before or any times this has occurred in the past. But still, it's probably gonna get weird. But I just find, and this is probably how the characters in the book acted as well. But it's so odd to me that Jordan Peterson uses the term ideological possession, right? Which just means
mm.
like people have a stance or a perspective or an opinion on something without even really mulling it over in their head and really
Yeah,
putting it up to scrutiny to themselves. They heard
it's
it, they assimilated it, and they respond reactively
mm,
when given the opportunity. And
yeah, yeah,
it's so frustrating because you can't have an actual reasonable conversation with people that have that perspective, because they've made their minds up already.
yeah. And it's people trying to fit in and like what will get me the most amount of followers, or what will get me the most, like people just agreeing with what I'm going to say.
Hmm.
How do I fit into this crowd? And there's a phenomenal scene in the book where kind of one of the main characters overhears everyone at a party going how about how money is the root of all evil and things like that, and then he just goes on this like 20-minute rant speech about how money is just like the base of society, and money is made possible only by those who produce. And it's really really good.
Man, it sounds like a great book. I'll have to get on that immediately.
I'll send you some of the quotes as soon as we're done here, just to get you a little bit excited.
Thanks. So, speaking of excitement, what's kind of your biggest area of intellectual pursuit around Bitcoin or related topics right now? Like, what's getting you off these days?
To be honest, it's kind of, I'd say, security and hardware wallets, and node running. So, I mean, I set up my own node pretty recently, a couple of months ago. Unfortunately, I had a pretty crappy case, so that thing just kept overheating. I've had to shut it down. I'm still waiting for the new case, so I can't wait to set that back up.
You just built your
Um,
own with a Raspberry Pi or something?
Raspberry Pi, yeah, and then MyNode, just
Yeah.
the community edition for now. And then if I go through all those features and feel like upgrading, then I can do that.
MyNode is awesome.
Yeah, it's so good. So that, and then also I got Andreas's Mastering Bitcoin book. So I've been going through that and just, I sound so, I'm probably going to sound so crazy, just, you know, just kind of falling in love with how transactions are built and how they're broadcasted. And just, it's just amazing actually learning how everything works at a base layer.
It does sound crazy, but you're preaching to the choir, obviously. You know,
Yeah.
do you know Max Hillebrand?
I,
He's a German Bitcoiner. He's fucking awesome. He does a lot of work with the Wasabi wallet guys.
I saw
But
him
anyway, what's that?
I saw him on Twitter just like a couple of hours ago. That's right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. He, you know, when I spoke to him last, he was like, dude, what, like, you know, he's obviously very much into Bitcoin. He's always reading and learning. He was like, I get, what did he say? My mind blows so hard that it hurts frequently. You know, like I have so many mind blowing realizations all the time that it physically hurts my brain. So
yeah, dude, like, and my friend that I keep on bringing up, you know, even just yesterday, it was last night, I was like, you know, I still actually don't even know how elliptic curve cryptography works. Like, I really want to know. And I just quickly looked up the YouTube video, and there was one by Computer File, I think, and just him just detailing how it actually works, and just going, you know, taking the tangent of the point and then the inverse, and then from there just doing it repeatedly, and that's how it actually works. And it just blows your mind. Like, I couldn't believe it. And I was just like, it's so simple, but so awesome and amazing. And just how every little piece interacts with each other.
man, to have a friend that you could just turn to, like when you're having beers, and be like, fuck, you know what? I don't even know how elliptic curve cryptography works, man. I'm a fucking idiot. How could I have let that one go? We gotta go home right now and figure that one out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all.
That's awesome. Well, man, it's getting late here, and I got some stuff on tomorrow, so I'm gonna let you go. But this has been super enjoyable, man. I really appreciate you shooting me a message and taking the time to jump on. Any last words before we shut it down?
I don't know. I appreciate it. It's been awesome. I couldn't believe it. I saw your tweet pop up. I thought this was just a private chat, and then you're like, "No, we're gonna go live," and I was like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't because I'll probably say something I regret." And then I said you got to shoot your shot. So yeah, this has been awesome. This is good fun.
Well, man, I'm sure we'll do it again. If I'm ever in Australia, I'll hit you up, and if there's anything I can ever do for you, just let me know, and you know,
All right.
I'll do what I can.
Awesome. Cheers, Sean.
All right, brother. Have a good one. See ya.